On January 3, 2020, the People's Progressive Party Civic named Brigadier retired Mark Phillips as its Prime Ministerial candidate to run alongside Dr. Irfan Ali in the March 2nd, 2020 general and regional elections. Brigadier Phillips, former Chief of Staff of the Ghana Defense Force, is joining me today to discuss, for us to get to know more about who Brigadier Phillips is. Brigadier, welcome to the program. It's a pleasure to have this opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you, Eddie. And from my end, it's indeed a pleasure to be here to discuss a little about myself with you on this program. First of all, I might say that I'm indeed honored, as I mentioned at the rally, to be selected to be the running mate for Dr. Irfan Ali, as you know, in the upcoming presidential elections. I'm looking forward to working with our presidential candidate and with the PPP Civic as they form the next government come the 2nd of March.
Brigadier Phillips, most of Guyana, when they hear Brigadier, in their minds, they're seeing someone in military uniform. You would have served Guyana with distinction at the very highest level of the military. But I think a lot of Guyanese want to know who is Mark Phillips outside of uniform. So we can probably go back to the beginning of Mark Phillips, a little background on you in terms of your schooling and so forth.
Okay, I was born in Georgetown on the 5th of October 1961, and at that time my dad was employed at the bauxite company in Linden. I think about around age 5, we moved to Linden to join my dad, and that's how I became a Lindener. So my life in Linden, my upbringing in Linden started around when I was about 5 years old. I went to the Christianborg Primary School in Linden. And after common entrance, I guess everybody knows what is common entrance thing. We now call it grade 6 exam. After common entrance at the Christianborg Primary School, I then started my secondary schooling at what was then known as the Karakara Secondary School. And on completion of the construction of the Christianborg Wisma Secondary School, which is familiarly known in Lynn as Multi, or the Multilateral School, lock, stock, and barrel, teachers, students, everybody moved from Karakara Secondary to the Christianborg Wisma Secondary School, the Multi School. And that's where I completed my secondary education. And on completion of my secondary education, I remember having a short stint as a teacher at the then Linden Foundation School. There was a secondary school that named Linden Foundation School. We had a very popular headmaster, Mr. Telford, the late Mr. Telford, who was head of that school. And after about, I think, one term, roughly about 4 to 6 months, I went to work at the bauxite company, Diamine, Ghana Mining Company at the time, in the industrial lab. Firstly at the bauxite lab and then to the alumina lab. And it was during the year that, almost a year I spent at the bauxite company, I decided to join the Ghana Defense Force sometime in December 1980. Joined the Ghana Defense Force, and that is where the military career started. On joining the Ghana Defense Force, training in England at the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst, during 1981. and then commissioning as a second lieutenant in February 1982. And from then until the 5th of October 2016, when I retired, on reaching the mandatory age of retirement, that is 55 years, of course, for the military, in the rank of Brigadier. In America, they say Brigadier General, but for the British, you do follow the British tradition in terms of naming the rank. Brigadier. And as a Brigadier, I held the appointment of Chief of Staff of the Guyana Defense Force for the last 3 years of my military service, from September 2013 until October, first week in October 2016, 3 years, Chief of Staff.
I'll stop you there before we go outside of the military career. I looked at some of your achievements academically while in the military. I'm going to leave the university and so on out for now. We're going to come to that eventually, but I want to talk to you a little bit more about your achievements in terms, I've seen tons of courses that you would have attended representing Guyana,
Yes.
And the training as well as a military officer. Let us talk a little bit about those.
Okay, to simplify it, in the military, you start with what we call tactical level training, where as a junior officer, you train to be proficient in leading small groups or teams, like a platoon, which is like about 30 men, a company, which is more like close to 100 men. And a number of training at the tactical level. Some of those courses I attended were trained at the tactical level. And as you move up in the Guyana Defense Force, you focus more on what you call operational level training. So you had a command and staff operations training, and then in preparation for higher rank, you do additional operational level training, and then of course you're exposed both local and overseas to what we call a strategic level training, where you're exposed to issues that pertains at the national level, political, military, economic, etc., national, regional, international level. So the number of courses that you would have seen listed in the CV did cover training at the tactical, operational, and strategic level.
I suspect, I may not have seen all of them, but you hold a bachelor's in public management and a master's degree in public management.
Mm-hmm.
I want to take you over a little bit more into your post-military career. You did say in 2016 upon retirement that your intention was to search for a civilian job where you can continue to serve Guyana at the national level as much as possible. 3 years, 4 years almost later, you have now entered the political arena. There seems to be a lot of questions on the minds of some as to why politics in the first place, and secondly, why the People's Progressive Party.
Okay. Well, the thing is, after serving as the chief of staff and after the university education that you mentioned, it's only natural that one will want to continue serving at that level and higher. In my case, on retirement, I decided, because of domestic issues, to focus on the welfare of my father, you know, who was aged at the time and had some medical difficulties. So from 2016 to now, my main focus was really, I must admit, looking after the welfare of my father, who unfortunately passed away mid last year around May. But I know that I'm satisfied that as a son, I I did what I should have done for him, and I've made his life comfortable to the end. Um, I always had a bee in my bonnet to get into politics, and even some of the politicians from the PPP government who have interacted with me perhaps may remember me hinting that perhaps someday, at the end of my military career, I may one day join you in politics. Not necessarily at the time saying join which party, but join you as a politician. So for me, it was a natural progression after retiring from the public service to explore and eventually pursue service in the political arena. And as I mentioned, during the 3 years, focusing on domestic issues, I used the opportunity to, of course, read up more about politics, read up about Guyana, the history of politics in Guyana. And I became convinced, I must admit, that the PPP is the party that I wanted to join. So it's not surprising that when I was contacted by some senior functionaries in the PPP as to, what am I doing in, post-retirement, after some discussions, the offers were made, and I took up the offer to join the PPP because, as I mentioned, during my military career, as a matter of fact, during the senior part of my military career, I've been exposed to many of the politicians, many of the leading politicians in the PPPC, from my various appointments, starting with the Colonial Administration of Quartering, dealing with the budget of the GDF. I had to interface with politicians from the PPP, and over time, I get to understand their vision for Guyana, the policies that they are for Guyana, and I've witnessed the development over PPP governments prior to 2015. And I must say, in a sense, that is what encouraged me to be part of the PPP and to continue this development in Guyana.
Let us talk about, and you've been in that position at least two, in terms of chief of staff, at least 2 years.
3 years.
Before the end of the PPC government, PPC coming out of office. But you mentioned that you've been dealing with the budgets for the military.
Yes.
Prior to that, for some time as a senior officer. If you were to make an assessment of how has there been any really transformation during your period there, dealing with the first and foremost the budget of the army under the PPP, and then into the being the chief of staff? If you were to make an assessment of the army in terms of its transformation, is there anything or how many things you could probably point to you think were significant?
Well, I can tell you offhand that I have seen a tremendous growth in the capital expenditure of the GDF under the PPPC. If you can recall, the PPC came to power in 1992. And the facts are there. If you can go and look at the budgets before 1992, you'll see that, the capital budget compared to the capital budgets post 1992, there's been a tremendous increase in those budgets, especially for the GDF. 1992, I was, I think, in the rank of a captain, and of course, I became senior and became more exposed to the expenditures that were, allocated to the GDF. And the facts are there. If you check the budgets, we receive more money, definitely on the capital expenditure during the tenure of the PPPC, that is from 1992 to as far as 2014, end 2014, 2015. And that has led to stabilization and, really the transformation of the GDF in terms of the development of the GDF.
So now you're into politics. I think you've switched hats, if you want to call it that. Let us talk a little bit about, and I asked this question a little earlier, but I want to bring it back, about what drove you directly to choose the PPP. You spoke generally about,
Yes.
about policies and so forth. A little bit more pointed.
The PPP is pro-poor. They've spent a lot of time devising and implementing policies to alleviate poverty in Guyana. The PPP is supportive of the private sector. And as you know, if you have growth in the private sector, the growth in the economy from facilitating the private sector will also help in alleviation of poverty, creation of employment, for example. Growth in the private sector goes hand in hand with growth in employment opportunity for youths and for anybody who's employable in Guyana. And that itself has a positive effect on, poverty evaluation in Guyana. The PPP has rolled out an infrastructural development plan for Guyana, and it has resulted in increased roads for purposes of communication throughout the length and breadth of Guyana, roads to the agricultural areas, farm to market roads in Guyana, the building of facilities like wharves, the expansion of the Timeri International Airport and other regional and hinterland airports or airstrips, so to speak. All in all, we had the hydro project, the planned hydro project, which was placed on hold. Hopefully, with the return to the PPP in government, we will have the hydro project placed on the front burner again, because investment in renewable energy sources is the way to go for Guyana. So all in all, I would say that I am convinced that the PPP policy for the development of Guyana is the policy or policies that I would like to embrace.
You mentioned there that the PPP is a pro-poor party, and you outlined some of the policies to support your position. And we've been hearing talks about issues of taxation after 2015, issues of a number of reversals of pro-poor benefits that were created by the PPP. I suspect that during the 3 years when you take that little break between your military career and entering politics, you would have been examining these issues. Your thoughts with regards to some of the actions after the elections in 2015.
Well, more than examining the issues, I mean, interacting with people as you go through your daily routine, on the roads, in the markets, etc., in the shops and so on. You hear the complaints of people. I mean, you're talking about taxation on the water. Let's start with that. I mean, there's a taxation on water. There was not a taxation on water before. There's a taxation on almost everything you could think about. No, education. If you choose to send your child to a private school, right, the price went up because there was a taxation placed on education. And these are issues that are ventilated throughout the length and breadth of Guyana by the people of Guyana because they're hurting, right? people are paying more for everything now in Guyana than before 2015. Farmers, right? The rates that the farmers, the poor farmers have to pay. You just go to Barbies, West Coast Barbies, the number of farmers who were protesting only recently as to the huge increases in the rates and taxes that they have to pay. The small forest operators in Linden, right? They're up in arms too. The gold miners, recently in the papers, you had the Guyana Gold and Diamond Miners Association, expressing their concerns about the poor state of roads in the interior to help them to get to the mining areas, right? And all the different support, financial support, and tax breaks that they normally have under the PPP. See, but suddenly, they have to be paying a lot of money now, and it affects their operations. So all of these cases indicate an increase in unemployment, because if you have a reduction in investment, it will affect ultimately your ability to deal with employment in a society like ours.
The question on the minds of a lot of people now that you have entered politics is what exactly Mark Phillips is bringing to the table, bearing in mind your expansive career and your experience in the security sector. I think one of the interesting areas in your presentation yesterday at the campaign launch was that of an anti-crime strategy and tackling the issue of unemployment, linking that to the reduction of crime in the country. So again, let us hear what Mark Phillips is bringing
Right.
to the table.
Okay. The anti-crime. Well, as I said before, bringing to the table. In addition to my military training, I've complemented my military training with university education. I'm just as trained like many of your public servants and permanent secretaries, having a master in public management. So I'm quite familiar with how the public service operates, and I'm saying that I could complement my years of military experience and my university training to assist the PPPC in administering Guyana on their return to office after the elections. With regards to the anti-crime strategy, I believe we need to have a more interagency approach, and I did mention this before. The police working with the other security agencies like the Ghana Defense Force, working together with a revived and energized community policing group, and I think we could do better in terms of fighting crime in Guyana if we adopt the approach, along of course with some external help. If the expertise is not available in Guyana, and personally, I would like to, it's already after the elections, once we're elected, to meet with the heads of all the agencies and, implement, as I mentioned, the anti-crime strategy that we have outlined and we have been working on. Of course, we can't let too much out of the bag now. This is the election season, but certainly we will be working with the head of all the security agencies to put together our anti-crime strategy. And as I mentioned before, if you're going to fight crime, right, you have to do it in a holistic manner, and that will incorporate what we're doing in terms of creating employment, and in a holistic manner, approach this whole issue of crime and security and public safety in Guyana.
I want to move you. We have just probably about 5 minutes or so to go, and I want to move you to another major issue as it regards to um, one, border security, the position you as a former military officer dealing with, um, you know, national sovereignty, um, the position that should be taken as an expert in this field, and secondly, on the issue of oil and gas. This is a hot topic, so to speak, in the country. So first, we're gonna hear from you in terms of border security, your vision. I know there is something in your head when you look at what is happening.
Well, border security is, I would say, a bipartisan issue, and anything pertaining to the sovereignty of Guyana should not be one that divides us. We should all unite, because if you cannot secure our borders, if you cannot secure our sovereignty, how can we develop as a nation? So, from a political standpoint, I see border security and matters pertaining to our sovereignty as a bipartisan issue. We will not go against any actions or any decisions by any government that is formed other than us. As you notice, the PPPs are always very supportive of any initiatives that will improve the security and sovereignty of Guyana. And we expect that whenever the PPP, or when the PPP is re-elected to office, that we'll have the same support from the then opposition as it pertains to border security. Your next question, oil and gas. Like many Guyanese, I'm reading the reports, and frankly speaking, I think we should have done a better job at negotiating a better deal for us as Guyanese. And as we move forward in the new government, I'm aware that according to international law, certain things cannot change, but certainly we will have to have a discussion with the investors in the oil and gas sector to see how best we can improve our returns from such an investment in the extraction of our resources.
We have probably about 2 minutes or so to go, and I want to give you the opportunity to speak directly to the people of Guyana. You are the Prime Ministerial candidate of the People's Progressive Party Civic. You're heading into the elections in a matter of 56 days thereabout. What do you want to say to the people of Guyana? We have heard complaints from a number of persons, the public sector, persons in the military talk about the bonus and a whole host of things. What do you want to say to all Guyanese to come and be part of or to support the PPP? Because there's always been the issue of race coming up whenever a certain ethnicity supports the PPP.
Well, let me say this. Regardless of race, each of us one of us is entitled to our choice politically. I have chosen the PPP Civic, and that is my choice, and I expect all Guyanese to respect my choice. Likewise, I will respect the choice made by any Guyanese with regards to who they want to support politically. What is important as we move forward is that we campaign on issues, we campaign for a non-violent election period, because at the end of the day, whoever wins this election, and I'm assured that the PPP Civic will win this election, whoever wins the election, in this case the PPP Civic, winning the election, will form a government for all of Guyana and for all Guyanese. All Guyanese must benefit from the government formed by the PPP Civic. And I call upon the members of the other parties that will be contesting this election to communicate the same ideas, promote the same ideas of a non-violent election. It's about time that we have a non-violent election in Guyana. You look around the Caribbean and you see many of the members of CARICOM, they have elections and there's no violence. Right? Everybody campaign on the issues at hand. You have the criticisms and you have the election. The election results are out and we formed the government, and life goes on. The time has come for Guyana to demonstrate to the world that we have that maturity, to have mature elections, free and fair elections that is non-violent.
Brigadier retired Mark Phillips, former Chief of Staff of the Guyana Defence Force, and of course, you are the Prime Ministerial candidate of the People's Progressive Party heading into the elections on March 2nd, 2020. I want to thank you very much for being here and to open up, to give Guyanese an understanding and an idea as to who Mark Phillips really is, outside of his military uniform, and his vision and how he sees Guyana as we move forward together. So again, Brigadier Phillips, I want to thank you very much for this opportunity, and I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us, Brigadier Phillips.
Thank you, Eddie, for this opportunity to be interviewed.